Right, thanks for inviting me up to Scotland, Julie, to talk to you. Of course, you're a well-known racecourse bookmaker in your own right, as well as a betting shop proprietor, and daughter of the famous, fearless Freddie Williams that used to take on the ring at Cheltenham. What are your earliest memories of racing and betting, etc.?
My earliest memories are they're just fantastic memories. They are of being babysat on the racetrack at Ayr predominantly, where I was far more interested in playing on the swings and the roundabout, and of course having a punt with my dad, although that's technically not allowed. And then I'd always get the money back when it lost. So it's a brilliant way to be introduced, where you actually can just go through a whole day and not lose a penny and still get ice cream at the end. Fantastic. So let's just say that my dad wasn't one to let things get in the way. So I can remember a brilliant occasion where he had heard the heater in Auchinleck had went on fire. And most of us would just step back and let the fire engine do what they had to do. And the fire engine was en route. They'd been told, but my dad managed to make it there in advance of them. And when he was asked, why would you not have let the fire brigade do their job? Why did you go in and risk, getting burnt? He said, well, if they'd went in with their sprays, I'd have been shot for a month, and I wasn't willing to lose that kind of business. And I think that was kind of the attitude that he brought to life. He hadn't been naturally blessed with opportunities in his younger years. Really sadly, he had issues with his legs, which saw him in hospital for a lot of his young life. And he, at that point in time, we're different now. We very much would probably find that people get educated if they're in long term, in long term in hospital when they're young. But at that particular time, education was secondary, and My dad left school and probably couldn't read and write very well. So he was owed a bit of luck later in life, and that certainly came in lots of times. But I think that adversity in young life, definitely it wasn't all luck. It was very much what he then, his mindset really came in and played a big part of it.
And you were telling me over lunch earlier a story about when the water delivery turned up. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah, another time where he ensured that life was not going to get in the way. So there was this wide load, and it was a new piece of machinery, and it was for the water factory. And it arrived at the wrong factory. The whole point of it was they were moving to bigger premises. And Simon, the bottom line was that it arrived at this place. He phoned up the police. He said, look, we've came to the wrong place. Your escort's away. Can you send me an escort back? They said, I'm really sorry. We've got nobody available until tomorrow. So if you understand in any way the cost of getting a machine to stay in one place for a whole 24 hours, then you will 150% understand that was not an option that was available to him. So he made a decision that it was only going half a mile, albeit right through the centre of town. So what he did is he got a forklift driver to escort this wide load down through the centre of town. Lord only knows, but nothing happened. Nobody got hurt in the process, and the bit of machinery got to the right place in the right time scale. And yeah, once again, crisis was averted.
On a happier note, maybe not for some bookmakers, your dad won the verse to have tilted his own bookmaking brethren in the ring. Can you tell us about any of those stories?
Yeah, one of his first horses was a horse called Icebreaker. And she went off at Musselburgh 33-1. And he wouldn't bet all the time. He would always want to feel that he'd got the form right, and he felt he obviously knew how the horse had been performing at home, and effectively thought it had more of a chance than 33-1. So I'll always remember being 15 and going to Musselburgh. The horse was second from last, going up round the back bend, but anyone who knows Musselburgh knows that you can easily come from there and win on the straight in the way in. And the horse, you know, obviously gave him one of his best days because that was his first ever winner. And it was one, for him, it was like one from one. And it was, yeah, and I think he took home a few quid as well.
Apart from Cheltenham, your dad bet at Newbury. Now, there's a story that's now folklore in racing. Somebody's actually come up and asked for £1 million on one. There's various versions of it. Can you give us the proper version?
Simon, I wasn't there then, so this story is going to remain a myth, it would seem. Um, my understanding from what I have been told about it is that someone come up and asked for that, and my dad turned to them and said, you know, it's water I bottle, not liquid gold. Brilliant answer when you're on the spot, you know, so very humorous, but I can't vouch for the truth of it. But what I do know is I was there some years later, 2004, and there was a punt on Onomusapur. Now, I've probably said that all wrong. Basically, it means pig on the back in Gaelic. So if you're a Gaelic speaker out there, you can correct us in my pronunciation, maybe spell it out to us. Anyway, it was a pig in our back, that's for sure. Because the horse like went over the line and it cost us £1 million, or just short of that. Do you know? Again, there was always lessons to be learned and everything. And what I found that night is Dad and I went back to the hotel. We had been having a great day up to that point. That went wrong. Went back to the hotel. He went to his room. I went to mine. We met up in the morning, and you wouldn't have known it had even happened. It was a case of it's a new day, it's a new way, and we go back out, and that didn't ever happen. The line was drawn in the sand. And I think that when you're a bookmaker who operates at that level, and I've always been clear that I don't personally, but when you are, and I watch and I see, that's one of the big things that comes across to me is that you absolutely have to ensure that you don't take the carnage of the day before or the up stuff of the day before and allow it to affect your next day. The other thing you never do, and this was another thing of Dad's, is if any coin drops in your bag, get it out straight away, because he only ever had losing days when a coin dropped in and he never picked it back out. There you go. Sometimes your gut is everything in racing. You can't quite describe how I've seen people come up to me, maybe a lady who's putting on a fiver, but there's something about the approach, there's something about how. And when I go to the track, I don't know if anyone out there has listened to the song The Fix by Elbow, but I put that on my way to the track because it reminds me there are people out there who know more than me, believe it or not, even though I'm a bookie, and they do. And the bottom line is I recognise that I'm there to pitch my wits against those people who potentially have a lot more knowledge than me. So what I have to do is do thorough research and do the work to make sure that I go to the track with as much knowledge as I possibly can. But where that can lead you to is just a gut feeling about something. It can lead you to a sense that something's different, even if it is only a fiver. And that happened probably with my dad in 2002 with Like a Butterfly. Phenomenal horse. He loved that horse. But he just had a feeling that he was going to be approached for a big bet. So before we went to the track, I'll always remember we were staying in a hotel. It had no Wi-Fi signal. We couldn't get online. We couldn't get a phone signal. We couldn't, and we were running around this hotel, trying every spot in the hotel just to be able to get in touch with people to try and get a bet on Like a Butterfly before we got to the track. We got to the track, and sure enough, the wager was struck. And everyone obviously thought that we had lost a fortune. But my dad in that moment for once could stand and go, well, actually we've probably almost broke even, because such was the gut instinct about that on that particular occasion, and such was how much he loved that horse. Because I think that maybe sometimes we forget that bookmakers actually really love horses. He loved that horse. He loved Rhinestone Cowboy. He loved Paso. That was his first ever bet, and he followed that horse forever. That, you know, we forget that sometimes that we can become emotionally attached to a horse as well, and Like a Butterfly was one of those horses, and fortunately he got that one right. So, yeah, so Dad, I have no idea what my dad would think about the ring now. And, you know, hey, he was ingenious, do you know? So, who knows? He might have been able to carve out a niche within it that I can't particularly find at this stage. But I think he'd have been a little bit disillusioned, which is a shame. All that said, I think he saw that coming. And Simon, were you not questioned heavily about whether you were just, trying to earn a couple of quid out of him in the early days of Betfair, and you were doing a bit of what's it called again?
I was being a floor man.
A floor man.
Yes.
You were being a floor man. Of course, you were being a floor man. But I think at that time he thought that you were just playing the odds. Not you in particular, but there was a lot of people playing the odds game. So I think he foresaw that, you know, that's where things were going to head off into. But anyway, back to reality. So I took over the business 9 years ago, 2 shops, and obviously on course. The shops, I've always been around. I've always loved. I've got fantastic customers. They're great. They're great people, and I've known them since I was really young. Considering I was the slave labour that existed in the family, and my dad got me working from a very young age. So, it was, you know, they have they have and they continue to be a place that I really enjoy going. But let me think. A couple of times when, yeah, a couple of times where I nearly get caught out in the shops. Junior football. Let's talk junior football. This is not where kids play football. This is below senior level. It's adults, and it's just below, and it's treated really seriously in our hometowns. And we've got a few very good teams. So we've got the Glens, we've got Cumnock, we've got Talbot, all within kind of, if you take a circle, all within probably 5 miles of each other. Gets very competitive. So I remember Talbot had just won the Scottish Cup, and this is massive. If you win the Scottish Cup, you get to play in the real professional Scottish Cup the next season against the senior teams. So you can imagine the celebrations that then ensue. Everything shuts down for a week. The pubs don't close. The police ignore that, and everyone just parties. So they had one last game to play, and it was Talbot versus Pollock. And Pollock were coming down, and everyone was in saying, "Oh, what price are Talbot tonight? What price are Talbot tonight?" This is really strange, you know, because they should in theory be really heavily odds on, but there's something not right about the way this has been asked. So I did some research. So apparently all the Talbot players at that particular point, because it was one of those roasting summers, so roasting summers, barbecue, drink, celebration, we're all rolling about, you know, and everyone was very aware that the Talbot players were still rolling about 4 or 5 days on, and were not really very fit to be running about in a hot, sweaty summer on the pitch. So fortunately, somewhere along the line, that gut instinct thing kicked in, and I said, "No, I'll tell you what Pollock are. They're 4-7." But as it turned out, nobody bet in the match after all, and the team went out, and it turned out true enough. Talbot were down 2-0, and I think it was 2-0, or 2-1. And they had to substitute the players off, and on went the coach, who was like in his 50s, and someone else, some other random person who doesn't really play for the team, and they scored 2 goals in the last 10 minutes, so Talbot ended up winning in the end. So that was a good learning curve, a good lesson of being alert to what was going on locally, and how local people would always know more than me, and whether the goalkeeper was off because they were away at a family celebration, or this was happening. And junior football's continued to be a challenge, let's say, over the last 9 years. Week in, week out, we make up our own prices, and see where it takes us, because there is nowhere to hedge them back. The other brilliant story was a political story, and it was about 3 months after my dad died, and they do say this is where the SNP first got their hold, was in this election. It was a by-election. It was out in the East End of Glasgow, and it was such a strange one. I had somebody on, and I think they were 1-4. Labour were 1-4 to win, because at that time Labour just ruled the north, and they were literally days away from the election, and the guy absconded. He just disappeared. Nobody knew where he'd went. But just before that had happened, I'd taken a £10,000 bet. This is all starting to sound a bit suspicious, isn't it? He absconded and I'd taken a £10,000. Not at all. Anyway, so I'd taken a £10,000 bet at 1-4. Now, okay, not a massive liability, but it was almost giving money away. I mean, it was one of those where you think, why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing it because he's a good customer of Dad's, so I'm going to run with that. Anyway, we then fast forward, and Labour are trying to find a new representative who's going to come in and who's actually going to take over from the person who's absconded. And the only person they can find is this woman, who then takes on the position. You're not going to believe, the woman was my tutor at university, who was a friend of mine. So she and Labour duly got elected out of the East End, which had always been the place where you just turned up and you were elected. SNP got their first proper foothold in Scotland and defeated Labour, and I won the £10,000 by default. So another, just another unique story. None of them have came along again, and I don't know that I'd take a £10,000 bet now anyway in a 1-4 shot political bet, but though it was a moment. So funny story at Cheltenham. There's and also this story I really like, because I love when people can look at something and not just look at the value in their pocket. So there was a guy come down to say hello to me at the track, and Paddy Brennan was on a horse, and the horse was looking like it was going to win coming up the Cheltenham Hill, but it was getting close. But it became clearer and clearer Paddy was definitely going to win, and this guy was getting more and more and more excited, and he almost started running, almost in tune to the horse coming up the hill, and he's running for miles and miles, and he's jumping up in the air. And so when he came back, I said, "Oh, did you get a winner?" And he's like, "No, I was actually on the other horse that got beat, but I just really like Paddy Brennan." Which I just thought is, there's not many times on a race course that you have someone who can just go, "I was on the second," but actually my passion for him, his skills, his horsemanship and his abilities is so amazing. And I think it was a little bit like that. Tony McCoy literally lifted that horse over the line. And you every minute you just kept thinking, it's beat. And we lost a fortune. We done our brains. And I just remember standing and cheering and just having that moment where something else takes over. And when you're involved in horse racing, round about me you won't be able to see, but there's books and books and books, and they're just full of stories, and they're full of amazing stories. And they're not all about gambling, and they're not all about earning money. They're about passion, they're about life, they're about experiences, they're about courage. And you just feel part in a moment when you're at Cheltenham, when you hear that roar go, or when you see something as brilliant like that on a track. You just feel like you're part of a sense of community. You don't know the people who are around about you. You don't know the 20 people cheering in front of you or behind you, but you feel that you're part of it. And without getting too sentimental, because it's going there now, that's what we buy into, out with the bit where you get you hopefully earn a crust, and you can make a bookmaker sandwich, albeit it's not appreciated by some. So so I think that this has got such a depth of history, and I hate when I see any aspects of our sport that pulls that down a little bit, because you have a very small fraction, a very small proportion of something that is amazing being referred to as a description of what is, you know, something that we should all be very proud of, and you know, and that we love. So yeah, I don't know what else to say, Simon, to that actually, and I'm getting far too sentimental, and we're going to cut it at that point.